Howdy folks, and welcome to another episode of Mingles with Jingles. I hope you all had a good weekend. Now forget it, because it's Monday. And, well, I plan to do things slightly differently in this week's episode of Mingles with Jingles. I'm going to write down everything that I need to talk about, and I'm going to get it all out of the way right at the start of the video. So I don't forget anything, which is what I usually do. Halfway through the week, I'll have a really good idea for Mingles with Jingles, and I'll think, yeah, I must remember that. And I don't write it down, and of course I forget it. And I'm not saying that I haven't done that again this week, because I kind of have. But rather than just sitting down in front of the microphone and then just, waffling on about whatever comes into my head, this time I have actually made an effort to go through all of my emails, all of the text files that I've scribbled stuff down on, and trying to make sure that I don't forget anything. So that was the plan, and I was feeling very proud of myself for actually getting organised in time for an episode of Mingles with Jingles for once. Until I went through all the text files and emails and realised that there was pretty much nothing there, because I hadn't bothered writing anything down when it occurred to me. So, I've kind of failed again. There are a couple of things that I did want to remind everybody of course. Tiger Day. That's one email that did survive the purge. 28th of April next month. Actually, April is going to be... It's going to be a real busy month for me. But Tiger Day on the 28th of April. Now, what the Tank Museum's planning to do with me for Tiger Day this year is, well, very similar to what they did at Tankfest last year. And they're going to be doing again at Tankfest this year. They're going to be setting a tent up just outside the museum entrance for a meet and greet. Now, the problem is that Tiger Day is only one day. It's not like Tankfest, which takes place over the weekend. So I can't be sitting in the meet and greet tent all day, otherwise I'll miss Tiger Day. So the plan, assuming I can actually make it to the Tank Museum for 9 o'clock in the morning, is to do a meet and greet, to say hello to everybody between 9 and 11. And then I get the Tiger Day experience in the afternoon, which I will, of course, be filming. That assumes, of course, I can actually make it to the Tank Museum for 9 o'clock in the morning. It takes me 2 hours to get there, which means I'm going to have to be on a train by 7 o'clock in the morning at the very latest. So, oh man, that's going to be painful. I mean, I am so not a morning person. And yeah... But it's going to be worth it, because Tiger Day is epic. And I hope to see as many of you there as possible. Come along and enjoy the show. And, don't be shy. Say hello. That's what we're putting the meet and greet tent on for. And of course, 2 months later we'll be doing pretty much exactly the same thing at Tankfest. The tickets for Tankfest tend to go a lot faster than the tickets for Tiger Day, however. Although, well, the interest in Tiger Day has been pretty good in the last couple of years. So much so that they're actually doing Tiger Day twice a year at the Tank Museum now. I think the second one is happening in September, sometime like that, possibly October, but there will be another Tiger Day later this year if you missed this one. Tankfest tickets, however, have been selling out for the last couple of years, so it's never too early to book your tickets for Tankfest. Book early, beat the rush, avoid disappointment. Speaking of Tankfest, I don't know if you've heard the news, but one of the confirmed special guests at Tankfest this year is a fully operational IS-3, which is going to be showing its stuff in the arena. It's on loan from the Belgian Tank Museum, where it was donated by Russia. Apparently all the Belgians had to do in order to get their hands on a fully operational IS-3 from Russia was agree to have it accepted by the Belgian Defence Minister. So understandably the Belgians said, yes, no problem, we can do that. Apparently when this IS-3 was delivered, it wasn't just in full work and order. It also contained absolutely everything that an operational IS-3 would contain. The radios, maps, uniforms, absolutely everything was inside this IS-3. So I can't wait to see that. That's Tankfest this year. There will be other guest armour turning up, but so far the IS-3 is the first one to be confirmed. And I realise that everybody watching Mingles with Jingles from an Eastern European country, the former Soviet bloc countries, are all like, it's just an IS-3. I've seen thousands of them. Yeah, but we haven't. So we're getting a bit excited. I've never seen an IS-3 before. Certainly never seen an IS-3 actually moving around under its own power either. So I am getting very, very excited about seeing that at Tankfest this year. Anyway, I did say that April was going to be one hell of a busy month for me, and as well as Tiger Day, we've also got St. Petersburg. St. Petersburg, of course, is where Wargaming's World of Warships development team are based. And on or around the 18th of April, it's the World of Warships Community Contributors Summit, which I'm hoping to be attending. I say hoping, I certainly intend to go, but, well, we all know what happened the last time I was supposed to go to Russia, don't we? And if you don't, I'm going to tell you. You see, you can't just go to Russia. Well, I'm sure some of you can, but I can't, because I'm from the United Kingdom, and I was in the Royal Navy, and the Royal Navy is part of NATO. So getting a visa, if you're me, is a little bit more complicated than it might be for most of you. You see, the first thing that has to happen is a visit has to be arranged and booked via a Russian travel agency. Now, Wargaming are taking care of that. But as soon as that's done, I can then start the visa application process. The thing is, in order to actually successfully complete the visa application process and get the visa, you have to actually give up your passport to the visa agency. And it can take anything up to 2 weeks or more for you to get your passport back. And so the last time I was supposed to be going to Russia was Moscow 2 Christmases ago for Wargaming Fest. Unfortunately, at the beginning of December, I was actually using my passport, and so I couldn't hand my passport over until I came back from a foreign trip, which meant that there was just 2 weeks left before Wargaming Fest, and that just wasn't enough time to guarantee I was going to get the visa approved and my passport back in time to actually get to Moscow, so that never happened. This time around, we've got just over a month, and I don't have any other foreign trips planned between now and St. Petersburg, so there should, in theory, be plenty of time for me to get this visa approved, but I have to wait on Wargaming to initiate the first stage of the process, which is actually booking the trip with a Russian travel agency. This gives you a code that you can use on the visa application, and this hasn't happened yet. Now, you might ask yourself, why is the process so complicated? Why do you have to jump through all of these hoops in order to just go and visit Russia for 2 days? And the answer, of course, is so that the Russian intelligence services can keep tabs on all foreigners who are entering the country, particularly foreigners who used to serve in the NATO armed forces. So I do understand why they need to know exactly where I'm flying from, where I'm landing, what time I'm landing, what hotel I'm staying at, what I plan on doing for the 2 days while I'm there, how I'm leaving Russia, who I work for, how long I've been working for them, where I live, how long I've lived there, how much money I earn, how much taxes I pay, and why they also need a full list of every country I've been to in the last 10 years. It's because they're paranoid Russians. I mean, I get it, I do understand, but holy shit, it's a pain in the arse. I mean, I wouldn't be exaggerating much if I was to say that in order for me to get a visa application approved to visit Russia for 48 hours, I basically have to write my biography and surrender my passport. But I'm sure it's going to be worth it. Speaking of World of Warships, has anybody noticed that in the latest patch that introduced the French battleships, Steven Seagal has been removed as a commander for the USS Missouri? Now, he hasn't been available, you haven't been able to earn him for quite some time since the original mission marathon ended when they originally introduced the Missouri. But those of you who do already have Steven Seagal as your commander, and I think he's hilarious, by the way. I don't know if you've ever seen a World of Warships replay where somebody's in the Missouri and they've got the Steven Seagal voiceover instead of the default captain, but he sounds like he's stoned. He sounds like he's stoned and very, very bored. But he's gone. They've just removed it from the game. You've still got a special captain with the various different skills that Steven Seagal had for the Missouri, but now he's just called John Doe. So what happened there? They did mention this in the latest patch notes, but it was like one paragraph with the bare minimum of information, just absolutely what you needed to know and no more. No explanation, no reason why he'd been removed. The patch notes were just French battleships, this, that, the other, French mission marathon, blah blah blah, these various different map changes. Oh yeah, and Steven Seagal's no longer doing the voiceover for the Missouri captain. Just sort of tacked on there into the patch notes. almost as if they were hoping people wouldn't notice. I mean, obviously, if you had the Steven Seagal Commander, and you've played the USS Missouri since the patch went live, you're going to have noticed. But, well, it's not just that they've removed his voice lines from the game and his likeness from the Steven Seagal Captain and then renamed it to John Doe and given it a new image. There was a sort of Easter egg. If you owned the Missouri, even if you didn't have the Steven Seagal Commander, I should probably explain, by the way, because not everybody's going to have seen the movie Under Siege. The reason why Steven Seagal's a tie-in for the USS Missouri was because he was in the movie Under Siege, where he played an ex-Navy SEAL chief cook on board the USS Missouri. So that's the connection between Steven Seagal and the Missouri. But even if you didn't have him as the commander, after unlocking him from doing the mission marathon, but you had the Missouri, there's a little Easter egg. When you're viewing the ship in port, Steven Seagal, as the chief cook, would wander around the upper deck, come out one hatch, carrying a tray of food, and then wander into another hatch. They've even removed that from the game. So I have to admit, I thought to myself, this all sounds very suspicious. There has to be more going on here than we're being told. I have a keen nose for drama, and I smell drama here. Now, obviously, Wargaming aren't going to say anything. But it didn't take long for me to come up with a theory, backed up by some evidence, as to why Wargaming are suddenly very, very keen to distance themselves from Mr. Seagal. And all I had to do was type his name into Google and just see what sort of headlines he's been making over the last month or two. And, oh, wow. I should make it clear, by the way, and it's because of this that I always thought he was a kind of strange choice to be picked as the World of Warships ambassador. I mean, I can see the connection, obviously, with the movie Under Siege and the USS Missouri. I can see why they made that connection. But the guy is no stranger to controversy. He's a little bit weird. If you've ever seen any of his movies, let's just say he doesn't have a very wide dramatic range. He tends to speak in a monotone. He only ever seems to have one facial expression. Two, if you count raising an eyebrow every now and then. He's, they make a big fuss of the idea that he's supposed to be some kind of Zen master to explain why he never betrays his emotions. He's got his emotions tightly under check, thanks to being in touch with his Zen inner self. Which is bollocks, of course. It's just that he can't act. But that's not a crime. I mean, if not being able to act was a crime, Nicolas Cage would be on death row. So, no, being a terrible actor, not a crime. Sex abuse, on the other hand, very, very definitely a crime. And Steven Seagal has, in fact, been sued between 2011 and 1991 by no fewer than 5 separate women, all on charges of sexual abuse, sexual misconduct, sexual trafficking, failure to prevent sexual harassment, you name it. If it's got sex in the title, he's been charged with it. In 2017, the actress Portia de Rossi claimed that during an audition for one of his movies, while in his office conducting the audition, he said, and I quote, "It's important to have chemistry off-screen," and then proceeded to unzip his pants. None of this explains why Wargaming would be so keen to sever all ties with Steven Seagal. Now, of course. It does beg the question, what the hell were they thinking? Aside from the obvious USS Missouri Under Siege movie connection, what the hell were they thinking getting this man as the public face of World of Warships in the first place? But why are they so keen to drop him now, all of a sudden? Well, there are a couple of possible explanations. On the 15th of January this year, so less than 2 months ago, actress Rachel Grant made another public allegation of sexual misconduct against him. And just last month, in February, the LA County District Attorney announced that Steven Seagal, amongst many others, was a subject of interest in ongoing sex abuse investigations. And that's not all. I'm sure you've all heard of Bitcoin, the cryptocurrency. And maybe you've also heard that it's not doing too well. Well, on the 20th of February, just over a week ago, Steven Seagal official tweeted, Stephen has just become the worldwide ambassador for the Bitcoin with 2 I's, second-gen cryptocurrency, with a link to the press release. More to follow. Love and peace, Team Segal. Zen Master Steven Segal has become the brand ambassador of Bitcoin 2 Gen. What the hell is Bitcoin 2 Gen? Well, basically it's a pyramid scheme. You can't help but get the feeling that somebody is really scraping the bottom of the barrel here. And suddenly, it really does not seem surprising at all that Wargaming are trying to drop this guy like a hot potato and distance themselves as much as possible as they can from him. I still can't believe that they actually thought he was a suitable ambassador for World of Warships in the first place, linked to the USS Missouri notwithstanding. I mean, they've done this since, with much more success, of course. Those of you who follow World of Tanks, at around about the time that the Swedish tech tree was being released, they got a hold of Dolph Lundgren, another 80s, 90s action movie star. And they got him as their tank ambassador, and they did a whole bunch of videos with him that were fantastic. I mean, I'm not seeing the tank connection here or anything. Although, I'm sure he must have been in or around a tank at some point in any one of the movies that he made during the 80s and the 90s. But it didn't really matter because it's Dolph Lundgren. Dolph Lundgren's great. Oh yeah, and he's Swedish, of course, so, you know, and Swedish tanks. There you go, there's the connection. There's the connection between Dolph Lundgren and Swedish tanks. They're both Swedish. Fairly tenuous link, but they made the most of it. And the videos that they did with Dolph Lundgren promoting World of Tanks were very, very good videos. So, you know, that's an example of how to do it. I mean, Dolph Lundgren is never going to win an Oscar, but he is at least capable of changing his facial expression every now and then. So already, he's a way better actor than Steven Seagal could ever hope to be, and also has the benefit of not having had dozens of past and ongoing sexual abuse charges filed against him, and be connected with a very, very shady cryptocurrency. So, well done, Wargaming. Anyway, I'm going to try doing something new in this week's episode of Mingles with Jingles. This idea actually occurred to me midweek. That was another one of those things that I thought I'd better write that down or I'll forget it. And I just remembered halfway through doing this episode of Mingles with Jingles because, of course, I didn't write it down and I did forget it. This is something I'm going to be calling On This Day in History because I love a bit of history. And with today being the 5th of March 2018, I'm going to take a look back throughout history at things that occurred on the 5th of March, not in 2018. Yeah, I really should have written that down. But you get the idea. On this day, in the year 1616, the Polish astronomer Nicholas Copernicus had his book on the revolutions of the heavenly spheres added to the index of forbidden books by the Catholic Church, for daring to express the heretical suggestion that the Earth was not the centre of the universe. They were just a little bit slow. This was 73 years after it was first published. On this day in the year 1770, we also had the Boston Massacre. Now, without wishing to belittle the events that occurred on this day in Boston in the year 1770, I think giving it the title the Boston Massacre is a little bit of a stretch. 5 people got shot, but they got shot by British troops while part of a mob attacking the British troops. Now, call me a bluff old traditionalist, but I'm of the opinion that if you're going to attack men with guns, you have to kind of expect that some of you are going to get shot, and 5 of them did, and 5 of them died. Unfortunately for the British, this occurred in Boston at a time when revolutionary sentiment against the British Crown was running quite high, and the incident was seized upon by leading revolutionaries such as Paul Revere and Samuel Adams, and basically used as a poster boy for the American Revolution, which ended up doing quite well. So that was in 1770 in Boston on this day, the 5th of March. On this day in 1836, Samuel Colt patented the very first production model revolver, his .34 caliber. On this day in the year 1812, while at war with Turkey, the Italians were the first nation to ever use airships for military purposes, using them for reconnaissance behind Turkish lines. This day in 1933 also marked the official beginning of the Great Depression. when President Franklin D. Roosevelt of the United States of America declared a bank holiday, closed all US banks, and froze all financial transactions, while at the very same time, in Germany, Adolf Hitler's Nazi Party received 43.9% of the vote at the Reichstag elections, which allowed them to later pass the Enabling Act and establish a dictatorship. 3 years later, on the 5th of March 1936, saw the first flight of K-5054, which was the first prototype Supermarine Spitfire advanced monoplane fighter aircraft in the United Kingdom. 4 years later, on the 5th of March 1940, Joseph Stalin, along with 5 other members of the Soviet Politburo, signed an order authorizing the execution of over 25,000 Poles, including 14,700 Polish prisoners of war in what would become known as the Katyn Massacre. Now you see, America, that is a massacre. 5 people get shot, that's just Saturday night in Flint, Michigan. 25,000 people get shot, that's a massacre. On the 5th of March 1943, the Gloucester Meteor, Britain's first jet fighter, flew for the first time, years ahead of the German Messerschmitt 262, but the Royal Air Force decided that it was so good they couldn't possibly risk it getting shot down and having the Germans get their hands on it, so it was only ever used for shooting down V-1 flying bombs, thereby establishing the precedent that if there's any actual dangerous flying to be done, call in the Fleet Air Arm, a precedent that the Royal Air Force stuck to throughout the Korean and the Falklands War, when all of the combat flying was done by the Fleet Air Arm, with the exception of the infamous Black Buck V-bomber raid, where half a dozen Vulcan bombers performed a magnificent feat of navigation, flying across the entire South Atlantic, only to miss the target, then turn around and go home in time for tea and medals. Also on this day in 1953, Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin fell over and died of a brain hemorrhage while at his dacha outside of Moscow. He was survived by his 2 grieving children, Vasily and Svetlana, although sadly not survived by the countless millions he had stood up against the nearest wall and shot, including several thousand Poles, simply because he thought they might be talking behind his back. Although he has now been safely dead for the last 65 years, he has also been known to make the occasional guest appearance from beyond the grave in World of Tanks, whenever a KV-2 pulls off an incredible shot. The hand of Stalin can be seen reaching up from the depths of hell and guiding the shot to the target. And finally, on this day in 1982, the Soviet probe Venera 14 landed on Venus. The lander had cameras to take pictures of the ground, and spring-loaded arms to measure the compressibility of the soil. The quartz camera windows were covered by lens caps which popped off automatically after descent. Venera 14, however, ended up measuring the compressibility of the lens cap, which by 1,000,000 to 1 chance had landed right where the probe was supposed to measure the soil. And on that bombshell, that's it for this week's episode of Mingles with Jingles. Hope you enjoyed it, and as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.